Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Dylan Wood, Senior Environmental Scientist Supervisor with the Department of Fish and Wildlife. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. Uh-oh. Okay. I think we're good. Never mind. There we go. All right. Sorry about that. So just a brief introduction to the CDFW organizational structure. So we're Region 2. We cover everything from Lake County here on the west side of our region to Lake Tahoe on the east side of our region. We have a number of different programs. We have a wildlife management program, law enforcement program, fisheries program, and then I'm from our habitat conservation program. So we have 4 different divisions within that: cannabis, water, interpretive services, and then my division, which is the CEQA, CISA, and LSA. In the habitat conservation program, we're responsible for a number of different sections. First being that we're going to be issuing lake and streambed alteration agreements in accordance with Section 1600 of the Fish and Game Code. We also enforce various fish and game codes from 1600 to 5650 and 5652. We also review California Environmental Quality Act documents or CEQA documents. We coordinate with public and private landowners to plan, permit, and implement projects, as Scott alluded to earlier. We respond to emergencies that impact the lake, stream, and other aquatic species and water quality. We work with local, state, and federal agencies to coordinate those permitting efforts. And finally, we coordinate with our internal law enforcement division on violations to develop a notice of violation, or NOV, which initiates the legal remediation process. A little bit more about LSAs, or lake and streambed alterations. Purpose of the section is to protect and conserve fish and wildlife resources of the state of California. Within our code itself, it says that the legislature finds and declares that the protection and conservation of fish and wildlife resources of this state are of utmost public interest. So that's kind of the guiding principle for this entire discussion today. What is the LSA authority itself? Under Section 1602 of the Fish and Game Code, an entity may not substantially divert or obstruct the natural flow of, substantially change the bed banker channel of, use any material from the bed banker channel of, or deposit or dispose of debris into the bed bank or channel of any river, stream, or lake without first notifying CDFW. So any project within Clear Lake usually falls within one of these categories here. As far as issuing an LSA agreement, I've outlined here the timelines. First of all, we have a 30-day completeness review period, followed by a 60-day period to issue that draft agreement. A standard agreement will apply to any project that does not qualify for another agreement type. So we have specific types for gravel, rock, and sand extraction, timber harvesting, general agreements, and routine maintenance, but standard agreement applies to everything else. And then standard agreements may be a regular term, which is 5 years or less, or long term, which is longer than 5 years. 95% of our agreements are going to be fitting into that less than 5-year category. What is an agreement itself? The draft agreement must describe the fish and wildlife resources that CDFW, so our department, has determined that the project could substantially adversely affect, and then also include measures to protect the affected resource. So the resources that could be affected are generally fish and wildlife species. Most likely here in Clear Lake, we're looking at the Clear Lake hitch, nesting birds, western pond turtle, foothill yellow-legged frog, and then rare and endemic plants. What are the types of measures that we generally put in those LSA agreements? The most common measure we see here in Clear Lake is a work window. So October 15th to December 31st is the window for work within Clear Lake. Protect the species through that implementation of a work window. July 1st through December 31st is our tributary work window, so a little different depending on the life stage of the fish. Erosion control, minimizing equipment effects, hazardous material control, waste and debris control, and then also wildlife surveys are very common measures that you'll see in an LSA agreement. Here's a couple of examples of different types of projects that we've issued for LSA agreements in Lake County in 2023 and 2024. We issued them for seawalls, docks and piers, boat lifts, erosion control projects, bridge replacements, and then finally fish passage barrier removal. Oops, sorry about that. Permitting enforcement and compliance for LSA. So in 2023 and 2024, we've drafted 2 notice of violation letters, or NOVs, which led to stop work orders and resulting in at least 14 projects coming into compliance. Our law enforcement division, or LED, is currently coordinating on several potential violations throughout the county. We issued in this like 1.5 year period, we've issued a total of 26 LSA and streambed alteration agreements. We were also our own permittee for one agreement where we removed a significant fish passage barrier. And then finally, we participate in events like this. We participated in 3 of them over the last 1.5 years to educate the public and help people come into compliance. And then looking at cannabis enforcement as well. So we do permit cannabis. It's the same type of regulatory structure for streambed alteration agreements. We issued 2 self-certification letters for cannabis cultivations within Lake County, limited to existing buildings and municipal water wells. We issued 1 general agreement and 1 LSA agreement, and we also have served several warrant inspections during this period. Going to be transitioning a little bit away from the standard regulatory structure into one of our newer programs, which is called the Cutting the Green Tape program. So the Cutting the Green Tape program allows for restoration, enhancement projects, just things that are generally benefiting fish and wildlife resources to go forward with an express regulatory track. In particular, we issue an exemption through CEQA. It's called the Statutory Exemption for Restoration Permitting. So that statutory exemption, Statutory exemption is a project that is exclusively restoration, but it can have some incidental public benefits, so recreation, transport, things like that, but we're primarily focused on that restoration aspect of things. One of the mandates of this is that the project delivers long-term climate and biodiversity and species recovery benefits. All the construction of the project must be related specifically to restoration. Finally, the lead agency request will come in through CDFW, and then our director needs to sign that. So going all the way from the basic level up to our very top of our department. It generally is a pretty fast process though. So we've had a lot of success with this. We've done approximately 30 of them since this was first implemented in 2021, and the legislature found that it's been a big success, so they extended it from its original expiration date in 2025 to 2030. Some of the different types of restoration project take authorizations that we can also implement through this Cutting the Green Tape program. We have a Habitat Restoration Enhancement Act, which combines that CEQA exemption with LSA, CISA permits, and then the Clean Water Act 401. So when a 401 is involved, we can use this express pathway to get the project permitted. We also, through the Cutting the Green Tape program, will issue what's called a Restoration Management Permit, which is a consolidated take authorization for both state-listed and fully protected species, so that's state only. And then Restoration Consistency Determination, also implemented through that same program, which is for both state and federally listed species at the same time. So that allows projects that have these benefits to the environment, restoration projects, to move forward with this express pathway, cutting the green tape, getting us out of the way of stopping these important projects. And that concludes the formal portion of my presentation today. I've added some contact information here. If you'd like more information on our LSA program itself, you can reach out to any of these email addresses. We also have a dedicated restoration coordinator for those Cutting the Green Tape projects. Kaylee, she's listed here. And then finally, for our law enforcement division, we as a department do our best to keep tabs on everything possible, but there's so much land, there's so many projects happening that we really depend on the public to be able to tell us when things are happening. So I've included this law enforcement CalTIP number here. If you see something, please say something. We'll be happy to devote resources to it in order to make sure everything is environmental compliance. So with that being said, thank you very much, and happy to take any questions.
We can also welcome Scott back to the stage, who is happy to take questions as well, just in case our second session goes a little bit long and we don't have time for that full panel Q&A. But please feel free to come up to the microphone, and if anyone wants the microphone brought to them, just let me know.
Hi, I'm with the Lake County Land Trust, and I wanted to, the SERP extension, when I talked to Kaylee about it a few months ago, she said what was pending was to remove the date forever. So it's not forever, it's just,
Yeah, we're hoping that it will be forever, but for now, it was easiest to get it through with that 5-year extension.
okay,
So,
that's cool, thanks.
yeah, exactly. Please.
Are there any exemptions to the time frame? The reason why I ask is my dock is one of them that was damaged 2 years ago. I just got my permit from the city. They said that the barge could not come in until October.
Mhm.
The problem that I'm having is the water is going out very fast. So the barge is not going to get in there. So is there a way around that time frame?
Yeah, so,
Can you repeat the question since you didn't come up to the mic?
yes. So the question was, is there an exemption from the time frame, specifically the work window? Is that what you're referring to, the October 15th through December 31st?
I'm not going to have enough water.
Yeah, so within our LSA permits, we always have what's called a work period modification measure, which allows for individual consultation depending on project site conditions. So if there is water in the project area and we want to make sure that that project is done before October 15th, we're able to do a survey for you, determine if there are Clear Lake hitch present within the area, and then allow you to proceed if there aren't Clear Lake hitch present. You can call us directly and we can coordinate that for you. Yeah, absolutely.
I'm wondering about invasive plant removal like broom,
Uh-huh.
which sometimes do you get involved with that?
Yes, we do get involved with a number of different invasive species control measures. Usually if the project is extensive enough as far as invasive species controls, then it would apply to these regulatory structures and we'll be involved directly with the permitting approach. Other times we're just informally consulting to make sure that impacts to the environment are minimized while those invasive species are getting controlled. We also have a different program that we're also working under to specifically control invasive species with our California Conservation Corps. So kind of tackling it in a number of different ways.
On that last one, did you mean that you help out doing it?
Yes, we do. We implemented a project last year where we did a number of creek cleanings throughout the county, and we're hoping to do more as funding allows. So,
Helen, could you mention the Lake County Shoreline Stewardship Program as well?
in what context?
You don't know about it, this is good. This is why we have these conferences. So Angela De Palma Dow is in charge of the Shoreline Stewardship Program. And if you go on the Lake County Water Resources Department website, you will see a description of it. This is where phenomenal people like the Terra folks who are right here are hired by, as part of a collaborative effort with Lake County, to go into areas and remove primrose and replant tule. And so far, it's been taking place on Clark's Island. If anyone has been out there and seen the before and the after, it is stunning. Work has also been done at the Wright Preserve or the Kolanapo New Nature Preserve at Clear Lake State Park and also at the park in Lucerne. And this Shoreline Stewardship Program, which is going to launch in a month or two, provides supplementary assistance to lake shore property owners who want to deal with invasive species. Specifically, creeping water primrose, but also other invasive species. If you want to get some immediate information on that, track down Angela during this conference, or give her a call after the symposium and get your name on the list, because it's a very special opportunity, and we will be sure and send all the materials to you as well, Dylan, so that we can work together, because I could see some real synergies with that.
Yes, absolutely. That's something we're very supportive of.
Yeah, Clear Lake State Park has the primrose there. It is unbelievable. However, it's less horrible because of the consistent efforts of Terra staff members.
Well, I know they cleared out the whole big area at the Bucks last year.
And again this year.
It's all over.
We, believe me, we know. We hear you.
Just what I wanted to know,
No, this is specifically for shoreline restoration work through the removal of invasive plant species using mechanical means. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
I had a question about the earlier slides, the previous ones before yours.
Oh, yeah, for Scott?
Yes. So my question was, is that the ordinance is being changed currently to include Thule management by tribes?
Can I say that I'm really hard of hearing? Probably deaf is the way to express that. And so you'll need to speak up, speak clearly. Sorry.
The ordinance
Yeah.
for the new changes that are being presented to include Thule management with tribes? Is that what you said in your previous slides?
Yeah,
Which hasn't been passed yet, correct?
because right now the shoreline ordinance has very little about vegetation management. That's what you're talking about, the restoration stuff. And they basically, that section in the ordinance is referred to as beach clearing. And it essentially says that you can cut tules, willows, et cetera, but you can't do anything that causes the death. And for a commercial property, why then they have the zero net loss program. And so it's not really very, it doesn't really take into consideration the types of projects that the tribes are trying to do with the Thule restoration and things like that. And so we wanted to at least include that in the revision of the ordinance. So, because technically anything that's within the shore zone and activities like that do require a permit. Well, on a restoration project, why we wouldn't charge a fee for it. It would be more just like, so what is the project description? What are you going to do? What's your timing for doing it and things like that? We certainly would not stand in the way of doing any of those projects. It's just that we want them documented, what is occurring and what's going to occur.
So currently, what's happening with the Thules now? What are you doing now? Because that is revised and has not been passed yet in the ordinance. Your example application number 2 said that the structure was in heavily Thuled area with low water. So when you go to restore a structure, I'm assuming it's a dock.
And like I said,
What do you do with the Thules? Do you remove them? Do you offer some replanting, some plug pulling?
well, in areas where there's tules that are going to be displaced on a lake bed project, why typically they would be required to replant an equal amount or more to replace what was displaced. And, some properties it's almost impractical to try to replant on that because there's so many tules there. And in that situation like that, it would be better to use the effort to plant it in an area in a restoration type project versus planting it on a parcel that is already fully involved with tules.
So your answer is, what do you do with the tules when it comes to a structure right now, since the ordinance has not been passed? Are you just disposing of them, or are you offering the tribes to come in and remove and replant?
The whole
At this time.
Mitigation part of it, if restoration and whatnot, is fairly new
Okay.
to our processes,
Okay.
if you will. And certainly with the listing of the hitch, the listing of the hitch was we weren't really sure how to approach the problem. I won't say the problem, having to incorporate the hitch protection into our permitting process. And ultimately, the work window that Dylan referred to was a big part of that.
Mm-hmm.
You either try to, if there's going to be impacts, you try to minimize or avoidance and minimization. And if you can't do that, well, then you have to mitigate. And so the work window provides an avoidance and minimization effort. And so it's all pretty new to us, and we're still trying to figure out the restoration. What do you do when the tules are displaced and whatnot? Often on projects, it's a relatively small amount, but that's, again, relative. What's the determination to say whether it's minimal or not, But say, for some projects, there might be 8 pilings driven in an area of tules. Well, that amounts to less than 8 square feet of tules. And so ideally, you would want to take the area where the tules are being displaced. But often those areas are underwater, and there's, when they're going to drive the pilings, and there's no practical way to do that. And so, that's a process that we haven't really worked out yet. And the CEQA process and the lake bed alteration agreement process will also help shape the types of actions that are taken to reduce the impact or to mitigate for the impact.
Well, I just wanted to thank you for including that tule management with the tribes into the new ordinance. I appreciate that.
And that
Thank
was
you very much.
That was Angela's doing, okay?
She is amazing.
And we had gotten an application, or the folks had done some tule burning in Upper Lake, and that's kind of what started the whole process of incorporating the tule management into it's no longer beach clearing. We refer to it as vegetation management because it's much more than beach clearing. And so, yes, Angela, that was Angela. Any more questions? Thank you very much.
Anyone that I can bring the microphone to?
Mainly because I got the microphone. For both of you, so first definition of terms, Scott, when you mentioned lake bed alteration agreement, that is in fact the same LSA that CDFW, it's the lake and stream bed alteration agreement?
Yes.
Okay, so LSA is for everybody. So, and it sounds like even a simple dock permit or something like that, it's almost like a land development permit over in CDD. So in terms of all permits all the time, both the shoreline, the permit that the county issues through water resources, the LSAs, any other permits, can you give us a sense of scale of how many people are just flocking to the office, know exactly what they want? I need a permit here, I need an LSA here, or is it more likely that some people struggle with understanding this various permit process, not just in the shoreline areas where hopefully they know they need to do something, but up in the tributaries where there's a lot of agricultural activity, a lot of stream crossings, culvert work that needs to happen or hasn't happened. How much of what you're encountering is proactive permit acquisition, and how much are people catching up, having started a project and then got tagged and said, you need to do something before you continue doing what you're doing? Can you give us a sense of scale of how many permits you're doing in a given year, and how many of them are proactive and how many of them are retroactive or fix it?
So we do roughly 50 permits in a year, give or take. What's funny is 2020, I did 4 permits before we had the COVID break, if you will. And then we ended up doing over 60, and we didn't resume doing that until like mid-May. And so I processed more than a year's worth of permits in 7 months. And so that was a crazy time. And so to get back to your question, or your comment about how many of these are proactive, if you will, when you have a contractor or a consultant driving the process forward, they know what to do. The issues occur when you try to get an owner builder to do it, and we have information on our webpage that describes what the general process is. We had an AmeriCorps Civic Spark, I think they refer to them, and part of what she did was develop a STEPS program, if you will. And Tracy Klein, sitting right behind you, why she took what Nicole had developed and then incorporated into the CEQA process so that people know more what to do. And so again, when you're working with a consultant, they know the general things that are going to happen. When we do the informal consultation with Fish and Wildlife, why I get an email from either the environmental scientist or Dylan, since they don't have that spot filled right now, saying, you know, you should have the applicant apply for a lake bed alteration grant. Well, I forward that to the applicant, you know, and so, like, again, it's the owner builders that don't understand the process and don't take the time to try to figure out exactly what it is that needs to happen, and then they get frustrated because it's not like you're going to apply and get the permit the next day. You know, it's like, for one, as every county employee will tell you, we're all very busy. We have more than we can hope to do in a lifetime, more or less in a year. You know, and that doesn't include the other projects and things like that that we're trying to get through. So I kind of lost my train of thought, sorry. But it's as I said in my presentation, it's a living, breathing document, and so is the process. You know, we have to be adaptable. And okay, I know where I was going. And so when they apply with us, why it takes a little bit of time for us to schedule the site visit. You know, I refer to the site visit as a HAB eval, very loosely for a better name for the process. And so when we get an application, we try to schedule that as soon as we can. But this spring, we had so many days of windy weather where we just could not get out on the lake, and it really put a damper to my being able to keep things on track. And so after we do the site visit, why then the turnaround, you know, for the informal consultation is pretty quick, and then they apply for CEQA. Well, they don't realize that CEQA can take, you know, we're required to get a minimum of 35 days, I say we as in the planning department, to give the tribes, the agencies, and the public an opportunity to submit. Well, there's a week or two that they need to prepare it for the review process. There's some time afterward that that it takes to process the information and get it all ready to post on the clearinghouse. Plus, again, we're all real busy, you know, and the planning department just lost their resource planner, you know, and they haven't filled that position yet. And so the CEQA process for a lot of things, it's not that it's ground to a halt, it's just that the planning department is having to juggle so many balls right now, and not having that critical position filled kind of impedes their ability to be timely, if you will. And I will say a comment about the work window. It's been an awkward transition in some respects, and I certainly understand and appreciate what they're trying to do. However, from a contractor's perspective, they're now working in a time period where there's often low water and they can't really access the project site, or it's at a time when you have storms and bad weather. And so they're trying to be out there doing work in their barges in inclement weather. And so it kind of makes it really difficult for the contractors to do so much work in such a limited period of time, in a period where the conditions aren't necessarily ideal for the kind of work that they're doing. And so that's where we're at. And I truly need to run. We're doing a bid opening for a contract at 3 o'clock, and I've got to get back to the office and get ready for it. So I do appreciate everyone's time.
Well, thanks everyone, and I think we have maybe a little